Beneath the glitz and glamour of Hollywood lies a far more fragile reality. Fame is never guaranteed, and one misstep can unravel a lifetime of success. From beloved icons to rising stars, the journey from spotlight to silence can be shockingly swift and often heartbreaking. Whether caused by personal mistakes, public backlash, or internal battles, these downfalls left a permanent mark on the entertainment world. In this video, we're counting down 15 of the most jaw-dropping collapses in Hollywood history. Stories where careers vanished, reputations crumbled, and the public watched it all unfold in real time. A joke gone too far. In the world of comedy, pushing boundaries is often part of the act, but there's a fine line between bold and catastrophic. When that line is crossed in front of a global audience, the consequences can be immediate and lasting. Kathy Griffin spent decades carving out a name for herself as a sharp-witted comic who thrived on challenging Hollywood norms. With a successful stand-up career, multiple specials, and an Emmy-winning reality show, she was known for speaking her mind and staying unapologetically herself. But in 2017, one image would change everything. That year, Griffin shared a photo of herself holding a bloodied prop resembling the head of a sitting U.S. president. Though the image was intended as satire, it struck a national nerve. Outrage followed quickly from both political sides, with critics calling it disturbing and inappropriate. Even many of her fans felt the photo went too far, and public figures distanced themselves almost overnight. The backlash was swift and severe. Griffin lost endorsement deals, was dropped from TV appearances, and saw her comedy tour canceled across the country. She publicly apologized and explained the context of the photo, but the damage had already been done. The controversy not only derailed her career, it placed her under government investigation and resulted in airport detainments due to the perceived threat behind the image. Years later, Griffin continues to perform and speak out, but her mainstream visibility has never returned to its former level. For many, her story remains a cautionary tale about how a single provocative act, especially in today's digital landscape, can eclipse a lifetime of work. The diva Hollywood rejected. Sometimes talent isn't enough to stay on top, especially when attitude begins to overshadow ability. Few careers in modern television rose as fast as hers, and fewer crashed just as dramatically. Katherine Heigl first captured hearts on medical dramas and romantic comedies, quickly becoming one of Hollywood's most promising leading ladies. Her role on Grey's Anatomy turned her into a household name, and her performances in box office hits like Knocked Up made her a go-to actress for romantic leads. But as quickly as she rose, her reputation behind the scenes began to tell a different story. Problems began when Heigl publicly criticized Knocked Up, calling it a little sexist, despite its commercial and critical success. Many found her comments contradictory. Why speak out only after accepting the role and paycheck? This moment marked the beginning of her rocky relationship with the industry. The situation escalated when she withdrew herself from Emmy consideration, stating she didn't feel the material she was given was worthy of recognition. It was a move that stunned her peers and alienated the show's writers and producers. Reports of difficult behavior on set started to spread, and soon, her once-admired persona began to shift into something much less favorable. Offers dwindled, and she was quietly written out of Grey's Anatomy. Her attempts at a comeback in romantic comedies and network TV fell flat. One notable low point came with CBS's legal drama, Doubt, which was canceled after only 2 episodes. Even a stint on the popular series Suits couldn't revive her momentum, as the show ended shortly after she joined. Though she continues to work, Heigl never fully recaptured the widespread acclaim she once held. Her story remains a powerful example of how public perception, workplace reputation, and timing can all converge to reshape even the most promising career. From icon to inmate, fame can elevate a musician to global superstardom, but when dark allegations persist for decades, even the highest pedestal can collapse. In this case, the fall wasn't just from the top of the charts, it was straight into a prison cell. R. Kelly was once considered a revolutionary force in R&B. With chart-topping hits, Grammy Awards, and collaborations with some of the biggest names in music, his career in the 1990s and early 2000s was nearly untouchable. His smooth vocals and hit-making prowess earned him titles like the king of R&B, and fans around the world idolized him for redefining a genre. Yet, behind the fame, troubling stories had been quietly circulating for years. Allegations of inappropriate relationships and abuse involving young women and girls were whispered about, but never seemed to stop his rise. Lawsuits came and went, settlements were reached, and Kelly continued to release music and sell out tours. For a long time, it seemed as though nothing could slow his momentum. That all changed with the release of the documentary series Surviving R. Kelly in 2019. The 6-part series featured survivors, insiders, and industry voices who painted a disturbing portrait of abuse, manipulation, and long-term psychological control. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Radio stations pulled his songs, artists denounced him, and fans who had once defended him began to turn away. In the same year, federal charges were filed against him, including child exploitation, obstruction of justice, and trafficking. The accusations painted a horrifying picture of long-standing abuse that had allegedly been hidden behind his celebrity status. Kelly was denied bail and remained behind bars throughout the legal proceedings. By 2021, a jury found him guilty on multiple counts, and a lengthy prison sentence followed. Once a revered icon in the music industry, he is now widely remembered for one of the most public and unsettling collapses in entertainment history. His story serves as a grim reminder that fame can sometimes shield misconduct until the truth finally comes to light. Confession that cost everything. When public admiration reaches its peak, even a whisper of scandal can cause shockwaves. But in this case, the silence broke all at once, followed by an admission that changed everything. Louis C.K. had built a reputation as one of the most respected comedians of his time. With his signature blend of brutally honest humor and self-deprecating wit, he earned widespread acclaim through stand-up specials, sold-out tours, and his award-winning television series, Louis. He was seen as both an artist and a truth-teller, someone who pushed boundaries without crossing the line. But the image he carefully constructed began to collapse in 2017. That year, multiple women came forward with stories of inappropriate encounters involving the comedian. Their accounts shared disturbing similarities. And though many suspected he would deny the claims, Louis C.K. did the opposite. In a public statement, he confirmed the reports, saying that these stories are true. His openness, while rare in such situations, did little to contain the fallout. In the days that followed, the industry distanced itself at record speed. His upcoming film, I Love You, Daddy, was pulled from distribution. HBO and FX ended their collaborations with him. His stand-up specials disappeared from streaming platforms, and his name, once synonymous with comedic brilliance, became a source of debate and discomfort. Louis C.K. stepped away from the spotlight for a time, only to attempt a comeback in the years that followed. He returned with self-produced comedy specials and small venue tours. While some fans embraced his return, others remained critical, viewing his actions as a betrayal of the trust he had earned. His comedy became darker, more defensive, and at times, divisive. Despite pockets of support, Louis C.K. has never regained his former influence or universal acclaim. His fall wasn't just about public scandal, it was the unraveling of a persona built on honesty, now overshadowed by actions that contradicted the values his fans believed he stood for. Words that shattered a legacy. When a beloved creator reaches legendary status, it can feel as if their legacy is untouchable. But in today's world, even the most celebrated voices can find themselves at the center of controversy, and sometimes by their own doing. J.K. Rowling, the mastermind behind the Harry Potter series, held a rare place in pop culture. Her books inspired a global phenomenon, bridging generations and sparking imaginations around the world. For years, she was seen as a beacon of creativity and resilience, especially admired for her personal journey from hardship to literary triumph. But over time, public sentiment began to shift. It started with small moments, post-release revelations that seemed more like retroactive edits than thoughtful inclusions. One notable example came in 2007, when Rowling revealed that the character Albus Dumbledore was gay. While many applauded the representation, others questioned why it was never clearly presented in the books. Later, she defended casting a black actress as Hermione in a stage adaptation, claiming the character's race was never specified in the text, a claim quickly challenged by fans citing physical descriptions in the novels. The real backlash, however, ignited in 2020. Rowling began sharing comments on social media that many interpreted as critical of the transgender community. Though she claimed to support women's rights, the language in her posts and essays was widely seen as dismissive and hurtful. The reaction was swift and intense. Activists, readers, and even the stars of the Harry Potter films, including Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint, publicly distanced themselves from her statements. As the media storm grew, Rowling became a polarizing figure. To some, she was defending her beliefs. To others, she was undermining the very inclusive values her stories once celebrated. Her reputation shifted from beloved author to cultural flashpoint, and even longtime fans began to reconsider their connection to her work. Though her books still sell and her name still draws attention, the damage to her public image is undeniable. The author who once seemed untouchable now finds herself at the heart of a debate about identity, influence, and the evolving responsibilities of those in the spotlight. A tweet that cost everything. Decades of success can be undone in a matter of seconds, especially in the age of social media. For one legendary television figure, it took just one post to dismantle everything she had built. Roseanne Barr was a staple of American television in the late 1980s and 1990s. Her groundbreaking sitcom, Roseanne, portrayed a working-class family with raw honesty, humor, and cultural relevance that resonated with millions. She became a voice for everyday Americans and remained an influential figure long after the show ended. So, when news broke in 2018 that the series would return for a 10th season, fans were thrilled. The reboot premiered to massive success, drawing over 18 million viewers for its debut episode. It seemed like a perfect comeback, a nostalgic blend of old characters and new stories that reignited public affection for the show. But just weeks after the season ended, the revival came crashing down in the most public way imaginable. In May 2018, Barr posted a tweet referencing a former advisor to President Obama in language widely seen as offensive and inappropriate. The post was met with immediate backlash from fans, critics, and fellow entertainers alike. The reaction was swift. ABC canceled the show within hours of the tweet going viral. The network made it clear that such language would not be tolerated, even from a top-performing series. Barr issued an apology, claiming the tweet was a result of poor judgment and medication. But the damage was already irreversible. Her name was removed from the show, and a spin-off series titled The Conners was created to continue without her. The fall from grace was sudden, dramatic, and deeply public. What made the downfall particularly striking was how quickly it unfolded. One of TV's most beloved comedic voices went from primetime star to cultural pariah in less than a day. Her story remains a powerful example of how, in the digital era, a single moment can unravel a legacy built over decades. The smile was a lie. Few personalities have been more synonymous with kindness and positivity than the host of one of television's most successful talk shows. But when rumors turned into headlines, the contrast between image and reality shocked millions. For nearly 2 decades, Ellen DeGeneres was the face of daytime television. Her show, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, built its brand on warmth, laughter, giveaways, and the famous phrase, "Be kind." Celebrities lined up to appear, and viewers around the world saw her as someone who stood for compassion and inclusion. Ellen became not just a host, but a cultural icon. However, beneath the cheerful exterior, whispers had long existed about behind-the-scenes behavior. In 2020, those whispers erupted into public scrutiny. A BuzzFeed investigation published a series of anonymous accounts from current and former staff, describing a workplace filled with fear, bullying, and even inappropriate conduct by senior producers. The tone of the show's brand, centered on kindness, stood in stark contrast to the toxic environment described by employees. The story quickly snowballed. Public figures who had worked on the show or interacted with Ellen began sharing their own uncomfortable experiences. Fans and media outlets revisited earlier interviews where guests appeared uneasy or mistreated. The host, once praised for breaking barriers and bringing joy, suddenly became a controversial figure. In response, 3 top producers were removed from the show, and Ellen issued an on-air apology at the start of the next season. But many felt the apology was too little, too late. Ratings plummeted, with reports indicating a massive decline in viewership, one of the sharpest drops for any major daytime program. Eventually, Ellen announced the show would end in 2022, marking the conclusion of a cultural era. For many, it was more than just the end of a talk show. It was the end of a carefully crafted public image. Her downfall didn't come from a single moment, but from the unraveling of a persona that millions had trusted. The greatest music hoax ever. In the late 1980s, a musical duo stormed the charts, dominated award shows, and won millions of fans around the globe. Their sound was infectious, their look iconic, and their fall one of the most infamous in pop history. Millie Vanilli, made up of Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan, became an overnight sensation with their debut album, Girl You Know It's True. The record produced multiple hit singles, sold millions of copies, and even earned them a Grammy Award for Best New Artist in 1990. With choreographed dance moves, fashion-forward styling, and catchy pop hooks, they seemed unstoppable. But behind the scenes, the entire act was built on a lie. Unknown to fans at the time, neither member actually sang on their recordings. Their vocals had been replaced by studio musicians, while Rob and Fab were chosen more for their image than their voices. The deception was carefully managed by their producer, Frank Farian, who orchestrated the switch and kept it hidden as the group skyrocketed to fame. The truth began to unravel when a technical mishap exposed their lip-syncing during a live performance. Questions started to mount, and eventually, Farian himself revealed the hoax to the public. The fallout was immediate. Millie Vanilli's Grammy was revoked, the first and only time that's happened, and the duo became the target of ridicule, lawsuits, and intense media scrutiny. Rob and Fab tried to recover, even attempting a comeback with their own real vocals, but the public had already moved on. The betrayal had cut too deep, and the music industry offered no second chances. Their story turned from triumph to tragedy, particularly for Rob Pilatus, who faced years of personal struggle before his untimely death in 1998. The Millie Vanilli scandal remains one of the most dramatic downfalls in music history, not just for the deception itself, but for how fast the world turned on two performers who got caught in a machine much bigger than themselves. YouTube's golden boy canceled. The internet has created a new kind of celebrity, one built not by studios or networks, but by millions of clicks. And while online fame can come quickly, it can vanish just as fast, especially when the person behind the screen is not who they appeared to be. Shane Dawson was one of YouTube's earliest stars, known first for sketch comedy and later for his high-production docuseries that drew in millions of views. With over a decade of content, he built a reputation as relatable, creative, and even inspiring. Collaborations with other major YouTubers and his involvement in launching beauty products gave him influence far beyond the platform. To many fans, Shane was a symbol of authenticity in an often polished industry. But starting in 2019, controversy began to build. Critics resurfaced old videos that featured offensive jokes, impersonations, and inappropriate references. The clips, once brushed off as edgy humor, now painted a much more troubling picture. As public standards evolved, the tone and content of Shane's earlier work came under harsh scrutiny. Things reached a boiling point in 2020 when beauty influencer Tati Westbrook released a video accusing Shane and fellow creator Jeffree Star of manipulation and backroom scheming. She claimed they had fueled drama in the beauty community for personal gain and pushed her to attack another influencer. Shane's response came in the form of an erratic live stream, which many viewers found unsettling. Rather than offering a thoughtful explanation, he appeared defensive and volatile, contrasting sharply with his carefully managed image. The backlash was swift. YouTube suspended monetization on his channels, major retailers pulled his products, and he lost millions of subscribers. Then came the final blow. A viral documentary by creator D'Angelo Wallace titled "The Exact Moment Shane Dawson's Career Ended." It presented a detailed timeline of Shane's problematic history and broke down how his public persona clashed with years of questionable content. Since then, Shane has made sporadic attempts to return, posting occasional videos and vlogs. But the platform and the public has largely moved on. What once seemed like an unshakable internet empire was dismantled by a combination of past choices and present accountability, marking one of YouTube's most dramatic downfalls. The monster behind the curtain. For years, he was one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood, responsible for launching careers, shaping Oscar-winning films, and holding sway over the entire entertainment industry. But behind the glamour and acclaim, a far darker story was waiting to surface. Harvey Weinstein co-founded Miramax and later the Weinstein Company, producing critically acclaimed films like Shakespeare in Love, Pulp Fiction, and The King's Speech. His influence was legendary. Actors, directors, and writers often credited him as the force behind their success. But what few dared to say publicly was that his power came with fear, and many were afraid to challenge him. In 2017, that silence shattered. An exposé by the New York Times and a follow-up by the New Yorker unveiled decades of alleged misconduct. Dozens of women came forward, including high-profile actresses, accusing Weinstein of predatory behavior that had been an open secret in Hollywood. The details were difficult to ignore and impossible to downplay. The revelations sent shockwaves through the industry and ignited the global Me Too movement. As more voices joined the conversation, a pattern of coercion and cover-ups emerged. For decades, settlements, NDAs, and institutional silence had kept the truth hidden. Now, that web of protection was unraveling. Weinstein was quickly removed from his own company, expelled from professional organizations, and stripped of his honors. Legal proceedings followed, leading to a highly publicized trial. In 2020, he was found guilty on multiple charges and sentenced to over 2 decades in prison. It marked a turning point, not just for him, but for an entire system that had protected powerful individuals for far too long. His downfall wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. It represented the end of an era in which silence was currency and influence was used as a shield. Today, Harvey Weinstein is remembered less for the films he produced, and more for the movement his actions helped expose. From Oscar winner to outcast. Some actors are so celebrated, so universally respected, that their reputations seem bulletproof. But when long-buried accusations surface, and are confirmed by their own disappearance, the fall from grace can be both swift and irreversible. Kevin Spacy was once among the most accomplished actors of his generation. With 2 Academy Awards to his name and critically acclaimed performances in films like American Beauty and The Usual Suspects, he was regarded as a master of his craft. His role as Frank Underwood in the Netflix series House of Cards further solidified his status, bringing him a new wave of fans and industry admiration. That all changed in 2017. As the entertainment world reckoned with its long-standing culture of silence, Spacy became one of the most high-profile figures to face public allegations. Actor Anthony Rapp accused him of inappropriate behavior that dated back to the 1980s, when Rapp was still a teenager. Rather than deny the claim, Spacy issued a public statement that acknowledged the allegation and simultaneously came out as gay, an attempt at damage control that many viewed as deflection. The backlash was immediate. More allegations followed, painting a troubling pattern of behavior. Netflix severed ties with Spacy, halting production on House of Cards, and eventually removing him from the final season altogether. He was also replaced in the film All the Money in the World, with actor Christopher Plummer reshooting all of Spacy's scenes just weeks before the movie's release. Legal battles soon followed. Though some charges were later dropped or dismissed, the damage to his career had already been done. Spacy retreated from public life, appearing only in rare social media videos that left many viewers unsettled. His attempts to regain footing in the industry have largely been unsuccessful. What makes Spacy's downfall particularly jarring is how quickly public perception flipped from brilliance and charisma to avoidance and shame. Once at the top of his profession, he now stands as a cautionary tale about power, trust, and the unforgiving nature of accountability in the public eye. Nickelodeon's brightest star burned out. Child stardom can be a dream come true, but when fame arrives too soon and without protection, it can quickly turn into a personal nightmare. One young actress went from being America's sweetheart to a symbol of how quickly the industry can forget its brightest talents. Amanda Bynes rose to fame in the late 1990s and early 2000s as one of Nickelodeon's top stars. With her roles in All That, The Amanda Show, and later teen comedies like What a Girl Wants and She's the Man, she was celebrated for her comedic timing, charm, and relatability. At her peak, she was considered one of the most promising young performers of her generation. But behind the scenes, Bynes was struggling. The pressures of early fame, constant media scrutiny, and the demanding pace of Hollywood took a toll on her mental health. By the late 2000s, she began stepping away from acting. What followed was a string of concerning incidents: driving violations, erratic behavior in public, and troubling social media posts that sparked widespread concern. In 2013, Bynes was placed under a legal conservatorship that gave control of her finances and major life decisions to her parents. During this time, she checked into various treatment centers and began studying fashion at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, signaling a possible shift in her life path. Her public appearances became rare, and updates on her well-being came mostly through official statements or monitored social media posts. Despite several attempts at comebacks, including public interviews and statements of improvement, Amanda never returned to the acting career she once dominated. Fans continue to root for her, often expressing hope that she finds lasting peace and stability away from the spotlight. Her story stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of growing up in the public eye, especially in an industry that too often overlooks the emotional toll it takes on young stars. Fury, fame, and fallout. Few stars have gone from adored to avoided as dramatically as this actor turned director. Once praised for his talent and box office power, his downfall unfolded in a series of shocking public moments that left fans and colleagues stunned. Mel Gibson was one of Hollywood's biggest names during the 1980s and 1990s. Known for roles in Lethal Weapon, Braveheart, and Mad Max, he built a career that blended charisma with raw intensity. His transition to directing was equally successful, winning 2 Academy Awards for Braveheart, and later earning global acclaim for The Passion of the Christ. For years, he was seen as one of the industry's most bankable stars, but his personal life soon eclipsed his professional legacy. In 2006, Gibson was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence. During the incident, he made inflammatory remarks that were widely condemned. Though he later apologized, the incident severely damaged his public image. The situation worsened in 2010 when audio recordings of heated arguments between Gibson and his former partner were leaked. The recordings revealed a side of him that contradicted the heroic characters he often portrayed: angry, aggressive, and deeply troubling. The fallout was swift. Projects were canceled, agents distanced themselves, and his standing in Hollywood took a sharp nosedive. For several years, Gibson remained largely out of the spotlight. Some believed his career was effectively over. However, in 2016, he staged a quiet comeback with the film Hacksaw Ridge, which earned multiple Oscar nominations and some industry forgiveness. Even so, the stain of his past actions continues to follow him. His case remains one of the most controversial in Hollywood's history, raising ongoing questions about redemption, second chances, and whether audiences can ever fully separate the artist from the actions. Pop Queen's public breakdown. No celebrity rise was more meteoric and no fall more public than that of a pop star who once reigned as the undisputed princess of the music industry. Her journey from chart-topping icon to tabloid target became one of the most closely watched and heartbreaking sagas in pop culture history. Britney Spears captured the world's attention from the moment she stepped on stage. Her debut single, Baby One More Time, catapulted her to global fame, and a string of hits followed. With her blend of dance, charisma, and undeniable star power, she became the face of a generation and one of the most successful pop artists of all time. But the pressures of fame, intense media scrutiny, and a lack of personal boundaries slowly began to wear her down. By the mid-2000s, Britney's life was visibly unraveling. Paparazzi followed her every move, and her personal struggles became public spectacle. In 2007, a series of incidents, shaving her head, erratic behavior, custody battles, dominated headlines. These moments weren't just gossip fodder. They revealed a young woman in deep distress without the space to recover privately. In response, a conservatorship was established in 2008, placing her father and legal team in control of her finances and major life decisions. While initially framed as a protective measure, the arrangement lasted over a decade, prompting growing concern from fans and observers. The Free Britney movement gained momentum as supporters questioned the necessity and ethics of the legal arrangement. In 2021, after years of limited public appearances and emotional court testimonies, Britney's conservatorship was finally terminated. The world listened as she described feeling trapped, unheard, and exploited. It marked a turning point, not just in her story, but in how society views the treatment of celebrities facing personal challenges. Britney's tale is not just about a pop star's fall from grace. It's about resilience, recovery, and the cost of living under a microscope. Her story continues to evolve, and with each chapter, she regains more of the freedom that fame once took away. Behind the family image. To the outside world, he was the model father, smiling, wholesome, and always full of life lessons. His hit television show portrayed him as the moral compass of America, earning him decades of admiration. But when the truth emerged, the contrast between fiction and reality couldn't have been more disturbing. Bill Cosby built his legacy on breaking barriers. As a pioneering black entertainer, he starred in The Cosby Show, which dominated television in the 1980s and redefined how audiences saw African American families. His work in education, comedy, and media made him a household name, and he became known not just for laughs, but for wisdom and cultural influence. For years, Cosby was considered untouchable, a living legend, but whispers had followed him for decades. Allegations from women surfaced sporadically over the years, often dismissed or quietly settled. It wasn't until a viral stand-up routine by comedian Hannibal Buress in 2014 that public attention exploded. That moment reignited scrutiny and gave courage to others to come forward. Suddenly, the floodgates opened. Dozens of women publicly accused Cosby of misconduct spanning decades. The similarities in their accounts, combined with renewed media focus, made the story impossible to ignore. What followed was a legal and cultural reckoning. In 2018, Cosby was found guilty and sentenced to prison, a shocking turn for someone once viewed as an American icon. Even after the conviction was overturned on legal grounds in 2021, the court of public opinion had spoken. Networks pulled reruns of his shows, honors were rescinded, and institutions distanced themselves. The carefully crafted image he had built over a lifetime was dismantled almost overnight. Cosby's downfall wasn't just about personal accountability. It forced the industry to reflect on how long influence can shield individuals from consequences. Once the most trusted father figure on television, he now stands as one of Hollywood's most unsettling cautionary tales. Hollywood has always celebrated its stars, but just as often, it has watched them fall. Whether brought down by personal choices, public backlash, or the weight of fame itself, these stories remind us that even the brightest lights can flicker when the pressure becomes too much. From child actors to studio giants, each downfall carried its own shock, its own lesson. Some found redemption, others faded into obscurity, and a few changed the way we view celebrity forever. What remains is a powerful reflection of how quickly admiration can turn to judgment, and how fame offers no guarantee of protection. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And if you found this deep dive into Hollywood's darkest turns compelling, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories just like this.